He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fith chapter. Huh. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fith chapter. That's right. Welcome to the Fith chapter. I am Brian Chapman. He is Dennis Fithian. We're ready for episode number 89. And Dennis, we talked about this last week, but given the hype of the NCAA tournament, this is probably the best time for, not that there's ever a good time, but probably the best time for Deshaun Watson to just keep having allegation after allegation come out. I think he's up to 15.
Yeah, well, Deshaun's like, yeah, how about that NCAA tournament, guys? That's what he's saying. But yeah, you can't get away from the NFL talk and Deshaun Watson, that's for sure.
Yeah, who cares about what I'm doing here in Houston, Texas? Did you hear that the Texas Longhorns lost to Abilene, Christian?
That's right. There's nothing to see here. Let's move along. Another day, another allegation with Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, up to 15. And actually, it was interesting because I was on Twitter earlier today and I saw that his one of his attorneys, or his attorney, whatever, released a statement through TMZ. And then I saw somebody quote tweeted it and said, Deshaun Watson's attorney releasing statement through TMZ. And that's probably not a good sign if you have to go to TMZ to defend yourself.
Well, tell me this. I mean, I don't know all the particulars. I know there's allegations on one side. I know he says they're all not true, but it's all, they want to take it to civil court. All the plaintiffs want money. This has nothing to do. But I know the NFL could step in and do something punitive there, but they're not trying to send him to jail. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. No criminal charges as of right now, all civil charges. And I know some people think that, oh, that sounds suspicious. They just want money, which maybe that is true. But, I mean, all these different massage parlors and massage therapists, and I think they're from multi-state or multiple different states. I don't think that just because they want his money as opposed to jail time, that it makes it look that much better for him.
It's less of a burden of proof when it's civil, I think, over criminal. So
yeah, I think it's more likely than not if it's civil and if it's beyond a reasonable doubt in the criminal court. I'm not a lawyer, but I think that's what it is.
I'm not a lawyer either, but if I was Deshaun Watson, I might tell my lawyer to say, hey, let's just get rid of this as fast as we can, whether I did it or not.
Yeah, well, that's probably a good idea. The problem is that every day there's another case popping up. But definitely want to thank everybody out there for tuning in to episode number 89. Thanks to all who are watching via YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch, and to those who are listening to the podcast via Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Of course, it is available on the day of each broadcast at approximately 11 o'clock. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and participate in each show by sending in your feedback via Facebook Live and via YouTube. Dennis will be reading your comments throughout the show, and our intern, Brian Jelinek, will be monitoring and directing some of the conversation on Facebook Live and YouTube throughout the course of each show. If you're wondering what we're going to be talking about, let's take a look at today's book. As you can see in the second chapter, was the Big Ten overrated this season? That's a question a lot of people are asking because only 1 out of 14 teams from the conference and only 1 out of 9 that made the NCAA tournament are still alive. In the third chapter, more NCAA tournament talk, because if you're a big NBA and Pistons fan, you know the Pistons are terrible, and you were perhaps watching the action not because you were betting, not because you were rooting for a team, but because you wanted to see which potential future Pistons were in action and how they fared. We'll tell you what we thought about some of them. In the fourth chapter, A.J. Hinch made a significant decision. He named Matt Boyd the opening day starter, and he's going to be the opening day starter for the second consecutive year. We'll tell you if that was a wise decision and whether or not he deserves that honor. And then
let's go.
That's right. We got a little over a week before opening day. And then in the fifth chapter, we've got the major wager. We'll try to get you some money. But we'll start off with the first chapter, and that takes us to the NCAA tournament where Michigan and Michigan State had a chance to meet in the Elite Eight when the brackets were created. So far, Michigan has held up its end of the bargain by beating Texas Southern and LSU to get to the Sweet 16. Michigan State had a nice lead against UCLA, but choked down the stretch, and the Spartans didn't end up even getting into the field of 64. Dennis, I don't know whether you want to start with Michigan or Michigan State, but the two questions are obviously why is Michigan still in Indiana, and why is Michigan State back in East Lansing?
Yeah, I'm ready to tackle both of them, and it's been quite a 4. I'll add 5 days because I stayed up late on Thursday night watching that Michigan State game, and it's close to 50 hours of basketball, and I took it almost all in. So it's been quite a ride, man, for these 4 days. You know, State took that L, and in Michigan State, it was like watching them over the last 2 weeks. I remember watching them in the Big Ten tournament against Maryland. We talked about it last week where they jumped out. In the first 10 minutes, they had this nice lead, and I almost tweeted like, "This is Tom Izzo, man. This Spartan team is very dangerous." And then, Maryland went on a huge run and came back and ended up winning going away. It was the same thing against UCLA. I was like, "Man, Spartans look really good." And then then the second half happened, and overtime, and they had plenty of opportunities to win that game, and inexplicably, just got Aaron Henry with the ball in his hands. Nobody like swatting it away. He just like squeezes it and it goes out of bounds, like passing it and stepping on the end line or the sideline. State was doing that a bunch of times this year. Were just like the crazy turnovers, and then to add on to that L, BYU looked so beatable. Like Michigan State could have easily beaten BYU, and of course, I think they would have beaten Abilene Christian or whatever.
Abilene Christian.
Yeah, thank you. I think they would be sitting here in the Sweet 16, and we'd be sitting like, "Oh, it's Tom Izzo, man. It's this time of year." They were that close to doing it, but it really comes down to like, it sounds very obvious, like make a shot, miss a shot, but your big time guys have to step up and they have to make plays, and your role players have to pitch in, and you have to rebound, and you have to defend, and you have to make your free throws, and you have to limit your turnovers, and you do those things better than the other team, and you move on. And Tom Izzo's usually really good at getting his guys in concert there and in some kind of rhythm. But this year, even though they were that close to doing it, close doesn't count in NCAA tournament. And the crazy thing about State is that Tom Izzo's built his reputation on, he's had some regular season, really fine regular season success, but it's really been about this tournament. And then, to see State fans be like, yeah, but you know what? Just think about what Tom's done in the regular season. It's like, wow, man, State fans resorting to the old, it's not about the big dance. Look what he's done is the body of work. And it was just a rough couple days for MSU.
Yeah, I think that the three words that stand out to me from what you just said are big-time guys. And you need the big-time guys to step up and all that. And the problem for Michigan State all year is that they don't have any big-time guys. They haven't had any. Last year they had Xavier Tillman. They had Cassius Winston, obviously. And you look at this team right now, you're going to sit there and give me Aaron Henry? You're going to give me Rocket Watts? You're going to give me...
No, I'm not. Against Michigan, maybe.
Yeah, you can give me Gabe Brown. Exactly. You can give me Hauser. You can give me Tillman. I mean, not Tillman, Bingham.
I would have liked to have given you Tillman. No,
I mean, they don't.
Bingham for 5 or 10 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, they don't have any big-time guys, and certainly the other theme is that they haven't had a point guard. I've been complaining about Michigan State's point guard position for 3 years because I've been saying who's going to be the backup point guard to take over after Cassius Winston leave. It certainly cannot be. Yeah, it's and Tom Izzo was hoping it was going to be Foster Loyer, and after about 10 games of his freshman year, everybody realized that wasn't going to be true, and he's still hanging around. Third year, got the chance to start. He's terrible. And what happens when you get to the NCAA tournament? Not having star players and not having a real point guard really came back to bite Michigan State in the butt. I honestly thought that A.J. Hoggart should have been starting, and if he was going to play, which he did, he should have played more than 12 minutes given the point guard woes, but they decided to go with Rocket Watts, and he finished with 2 assists because he's not a real point guard. They don't have any legit point guards. I believe it was Aaron Henry who led the team with 7 assists. You get yourself a swingman that can get you 7 assists, and you'll take that. But you need yourself a real point guard that can lead the way, and you need yourself some sort of star player, whether it's a guy like Winston who doesn't have much NBA potential, or somebody that does, like a Denzel Valentine who's a quality NBA player, to help you out. And they didn't have that. The other issue, and if you want to look at this just from the aspect,
I can't shoot.
Well, that too, but one other issue. And you can look at this just from the perspective of not winning their first game, is that Tom Izzo lost his mind again. Gabe Brown didn't switch on defense at the end of the first half, and Gabe Brown was arguing with his teammates vociferously, which is fine, and Izzo was screaming and his veins were popping out of his head. He was grabbing the jersey of Gabe Brown as they were heading into the locker room, and they were talking about it. I think Kenny the Jet Smith said that this was unprofessional or something like that, and the thing is, he did that. Tom Izzo did that with an 11-point lead going into the half. And he just keeps on doing this stuff, and he doesn't learn. I get that he's a great coach, Hall of Fame, and all this other stuff, but when he does this, it hurts the team. Spartan slappies all the time, and they were doing it last week. We're saying, hey, that's just Tom Izzo. Izzo doesn't mind doing it. Players don't mind doing it. Draymond Green was sending out tweets saying this is normal. But it doesn't matter, because whether they say that or not, it has an effect on the team. And when you have an 11-point lead, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Why stunt your momentum by flipping out like that? They had an 11-point lead at the half, and they got outscored by 11 in the second half and lost in overtime. You look at a couple years ago, he flipped out on Aaron Henry in their 2-5 game against Bradley. Cassius Winston had to separate Izzo from Henry, and when did he do it? He did it after a 10-0 Michigan State run to go up by 5. Michigan State had taken control of the game, and what happened immediately after that? Bradley goes on a 12-6 run to take the lead. Brilliant coaching. Now, obviously, they won that game, but it was a 15 seed. Then, earlier in that year, Michigan went on an 8-0 run against Illinois to take a 66-63 lead on the road, and he was screaming, I think it was against Xavier Tillman, after he dunked to cap out that 8-0 run. It's a timeout, and Spartan fans said it's not a big deal. He's screaming at him, and Illinois goes on a 16-8 run to win the game. Why does he keep doing this stuff? Why does it always happen when Michigan State's playing the best is played during the course of a game, and it ends up ruining the team? This stuff needs to stop.
Yeah, you know what? He's been doing it for 25 years. You came up with some, some certain plays. They're the last ones. Certainly this last one, you can point to where they were at the half, and, so you can say it was a direct result of him, melting down on Brown. But because I've seen him do it for 25 years, and because of the things that you mentioned, I think are the things that you, to me, are important. One, there's never been one single player that's ever stepped forward and said, yeah, you know what, Tom Izzo's an asshole. In practice, he goes overboard. There's not been one parent, there's not been one player. And they all know that, and he has the reputation, and they want to play for him. And, I like a coach like that myself. It is a throwback, or the optics sometimes a little dicey. Do you think, like, man, is he this close to having anger management issues and maybe going overboard? Like, the difference is, Bob Knight back in the day, he was putting his hands around guys' necks and throwing potted plants, and he had big-time anger issues, and you see that, and I think you take both of them, and you're like, man, Izzo's going to blow one of these times, and, everybody's going to say, I told you so. And, boy, he gets right up to the line and even,
but
goes over it.
To me, that's not the point. The point is not that he's not Bobby Knight, and the point is not, the players and the parents think it's okay. The point is that even though they say it's okay, it is having an effect on them, because you have Cassius Winston a couple years ago having to separate the coach from Aaron
Yeah,
Henry.
they won that game and
against
they
a 15 seed.
Pointed to
Against
that.
a 15
Well, I mean,
seed.
yeah, but they pointed to that like galvanizing them. Like you say, like
Yeah.
whatever happened immediately following. But
Correct.
they all pointed to that situation of it, like Brown got off the next game and that it brought them together.
I get
he
that.
He does this all the time. Like so, like every single time, it would be very interesting to go back. I don't have all of the blow ups or the heated conversations that he's had over on the sideline, but to see what happened in those games or what happened immediately after that, to see if there's some kind of correlation, that'd be pretty interesting. I know you just laid some of it out there, but
yeah.
Well, and the point to me is we know he's if this was 1, 2, 3, 5 times and it was only over 5 years, you might say, boy, this but this guy's been doing it for 25 years. And nobody's ever said anything. And one person steps up and says, one person that's ever played for him in practice say, you know what, Tom Izzo is kind of a prick.
No, but that's not the point. The point is not is he a prick or not. It's about what it does. Well, no, I get that. But for me, the point is how is it affecting the actual game? And immediately after he does that, it hurts the team. And it hurt the team to the point where they lost last Thursday.
But you're just pulling some anecdotal. Like, you can't say that directly affected. That's why they lost. They lost because they were dropping the ball out of bounds. They couldn't shoot. They don't have a point guard. They don't really have anybody up front. That's why they lost to UCLA. It wasn't because Tom Izzo, grabbed on the Browns shirt, and he dissed him and they walked up the hallway. Now, maybe it did, but I don't think so myself.
I think there's a way that you can criticize somebody like Gabe Brown for not doing what he was supposed to do without creating such a scene that the whole team and certainly the whole country, but for their perspective, the whole team is thinking about that during the half, and then that ends up stunting the momentum. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You got an 11-point lead, so I get that maybe some things aren't going 100% well. If you're a coach, you're always looking for what's going wrong, but you want them to continue to play 11-point better basketball for a half in that second half, and if you're doing something to that mindset that gets at them to have them play 11 points worse in the second half, then obviously, or perhaps, not obviously, but perhaps what you did was not the right way to do it.
I'm tired of getting Tom Izzo's back. Let's see what the
you want to get
feedback.
to Michigan real quick?
Well, we got a lot of feedback coming in on
okay.
this.
All right, let's get the feedback
you
first.
Call it. Okay.
Let's get some feedback first.
Let's see. Maybe they're calling Chapman a name here. First, Paul W. says college hockey coming up, and yeah, you know what? We're ready. I didn't like Michigan's draw, Paul, but we'll see. Bring on Minnesota Duluth. Let's do it. I'll be ready and locked in on Friday. Jelinek have to start believing these allegations. He's talking about Deshaun Watson there. Call Mike Florio, get his lawyer's opinion. Let's see. Ishmael. It looks like Michigan will get to the finals, but will they prevail? All right, so people are mixing in a little Michigan right off the bat here. So let's go through it. I'll give you the first swing at Michigan here. What have you thought of the Wolverines 2 games? Now they sit here in the Sweet 16.
Well, the first game against Texas Southern, not that big of a deal. I mean, they won by 16 points or whatever it was. The second game I thought was the more important game. And if you remember before the tournament started, I said that Michigan was going to lose to LSU, and I said that their ceiling was getting to the Sweet 16. And Michigan played obviously a very competitive back and forth game until the very end where they were able to stretch the lead out. And now they've reached what I think is their ceiling in the Sweet 16. But I thought that Juwan Howard showed a lot of versatility at the start of that game with trying to find ways to stop Cam Thomas. Obviously, it didn't work at the beginning, but he switched up his defense like 3 or 4 times, and Michigan knew how to switch up the defense 3 or 4 times. They still couldn't force a turnover, and they still couldn't stop Thomas, but eventually they were able to get LSU out of transition, slow him down. They were able to put Shawnee Brown on him, and that quelled his momentum a little bit. I thought that one of the other big keys to the game for why Michigan was able to pull it away was that Michigan was just too tall for LSU. LSU's tallest starter was 6'9". I think their second tallest starter was 6'7". Meanwhile, Michigan's running out there with Hunter Dickinson at 7 feet. They got Brandon Johns. They got Davis. They got Mo Wagner at 6'7" or 6'9", whatever he is. And they're in the paint. I'm sorry, Franz Wagner. They're blocking shots, challenging shots. and getting all these rebounds left and right. Shawnee Brown, a heck of a lot taller on defense than Cam Thomas. And LSU, they just couldn't do anything but get their shots blocked and challenged late in the game. They just drove and threw up bad shots. Also, at the end of the game, LSU's coach got outcoached by Howard significantly, not only because of the adjustments that Howard made throughout the game, but what did LSU's coach do to draw up plays or anything like that to help out the Tigers? And it seemed like nothing. It just seemed like he said, all right, Thomas, Smart, Wofford, play one-on-one street ball. And it obviously didn't work. You saw Thomas attempt 23 shots, a third of their 69 shots. So did Smart. And Watford attempted 11. You can't have 3 players attempting 83% of your shots and win. It's too easy to defend. There wasn't any ball movement. They were just dribbling around, driving, and getting their shots blocked and throwing up horrible shots. And the last thing I'll say is that Michigan was able to get to the Sweet 16 because they had huge, basically career days out of Shawnee Brown and Eli Brooks offensively, 21 points each. And you obviously need your best players, but you need your unsung heroes to step up to win some of these tournament games. And that's what Michigan got from Brown and Brooks with 21 points each to lead the way.
Yeah, I would say getting into the second half, Michigan going 13 of 14 from the free throw line was huge for them. And it's been the one thing that's been their calling card all year long is that they aren't just one star player or one superstar player. Isaiah Livers is an awesome player, but it's been about the 5 collectively, and they can go inside. They've got some size. If it's not going to be the 7'1" Dickinson, they are bringing in Austin Davis, who's 6'10" and has an array of post moves. And Johns, he draws fouls on everybody. He can drive, and at 6'9", he's pretty powerful, and he can shoot. I mean, they've got all 3 of the guys that they put out of, sometimes 4, out on the perimeter. They can all shoot, and they can all put it on the floor and drive too. That's pretty good. And they defend. Ask Iowa doesn't do any play defense. Maybe they should start working on that side of the floor. But they can defend. They've got an inside-outside game. That's pretty dangerous when it gets into the tournament. That's why, despite the loss of Livers, which is huge, I still think this team can win a couple games here. So they were impressive. It was a really scary start, to watch Thomas knocking them down from everywhere. But I think that moving forward here, the one thing about Dickinson, he was second-team All-American. But, as of late, he's been turning over the ball a lot, and he was really good at passing out of those double teams. Teams are collapsing on him, coming around from the other side, trying to force him to the middle. All those things, you have to do that. If he can come up, like I thought he played a C-plus game yesterday, if he can come up and get some B-plus or A games, it's going to be huge for this team. And that's protecting the ball, going in, jamming it on a few people, not getting in. Sometimes when you're 7'1", you're just so big and you outweigh guys by 50 points. You turn around, the guy goes flying. Hopefully he learns, man. Just don't try any tip drills at half court. Just get down there in the post and jam it.
Yeah, that was a really stupid foul.
Well, you know what? Against Ohio State in the semifinals, Liddell he ripped, got the ball, and went in with a layup there. But yeah, I mean, he's so important. You can't get him in foul trouble. But I think if he can up his game, he can really start everything by, throwing opposite, and then they can work the ball around and get open shots. They got enough guys where they can shoot threes. I think they can beat Florida State. I think they can beat Alabama. Now, of course, they could lose either of those games, but those teams, just like LSU, if the tempo, man, if it's high flying and they're going in, dunking left and right, Michigan's turning it over. But a tempo where the pace is Michigan, they're working it around, throwing it down low, starting with the clock at 10, passing it around. You can get it into a Michigan tempo. Michigan can beat both of those teams.
Well, I think that one significant change from going to LSU to FSU is that the Seminoles have a heck of a lot more height. You're not going to have Hunter Dickinson going up against 6'9" and 6'7" guys. You're going to have guys that are able to look at him pretty much eye to eye. So that'll be more of a challenge for him, and really a challenge throughout the entirety of the roster. I mean, Scotty Barnes, I think, is like 6'7" or 6'8" as a guard. So that's it's a heck of a lot different than 6'9", 6'7", and a whole bunch of guards that they had for LSU. But should be a pretty entertaining game this weekend.
Yeah, one thing I like about Michigan is Franz Wagner can check anybody in the NCAA at 6'9". He's a 6'10". He can guard 6'3". He can go up to 6'9". And we saw what Shawnee Brown was able to do, too, at 6'5". He reminds me of Rodney Stuckey back with the Pistons, built at 6'5" and has an NBA body. So they've got the guys that can check up, and Johns can guard anybody, too, on the front line. So they've got some versatility there that I think they can match up with Florida State. It'll be tough. There's no doubt about that. When Barnes, I was looking on NBADraft.net, and I was like, oh, they got a guy going 6th overall, Florida State, Barnes. I turned on the game, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, and they're playing North Carolina in the ACC tournament, and they're like, yeah, Barnes comes off the bench. I'm like, off the bench?
That's what Leonard Hamilton does. His best player always comes off the bench.
He gets the ball in the break and, goes and throws it down with a tomahawk, his big punch. I was like, wow. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, Patrick Williams came off the bench. I believe Jonathan Isaac came off the bench.
Let's get to some of the feedback. Key says, I'm not sure they'll beat Alabama. Sideshow Raj says, Izzo has become the old guy, get off my lawn. He was way out of line.
Mm-hmm.
Jelinek, who is a Spartan fan, let's see, he has a retort for Raj. Not out of line at all. It's all emotion from him and his players. People love playing for Izzo.
I don't doubt that. And my whole point was not, do the players love Izzo? Do they think he's a jerk? It's about, did that action that we've seen in a couple of times on a couple of occasions impede their ability to win the game? And did that stunt their momentum? And it appears that the answer is yes.
Raj says it isn't 1970 anymore. These new recruits see that behavior and they'll go elsewhere.
What's Amani Bates thinking about that?
Well, now there's your $1 million question, isn't it? Amani Bates, the best prospect since LeBron James, and he is committed to Michigan State. He pulls the old decommitment and, Chap, all of this, tugging the jersey and going overboard, and you say, you know what? It's just probably Izzo needs to move on.
Mm-hmm. Juwan Howard doesn't do that.
No, Juwan Howard will go after the opposing coach.
Yeah, he's not going after his own. He's going to knock out the opposing coach.
That says Michigan State is too inconsistent. I'm not surprised at all that they lost.
Yeah.
And let's see. Yeah, there you go. There's the feedback on the college hoops. Michigan State, and what happened to them.
All right, now let's turn the page to the second chapter.
We stay with the NCAA tournament and the Big Ten, thought to be the best conference in college basketball all year long. They put 9 teams, count them, in the tournament, but only one of them is still standing, and that is Michigan. The rest of them are all gone, including Illinois, a very popular team to win it all, including Ohio State, the 2 seed, who got popped by Oral Roberts, a team that I took to go to the championship game. Chap, what do you call them? Underachieving, underperforming, or overrated?
I think they're choking and they're overrated. I think that it's fair when, like, if they only had 2 teams or 3 teams make the Sweet 16, I think you could say, well, it was just a little bit challenging, and hey, 3 out of the 16 teams from the Big Ten, that's actually not that bad too. Maybe you have a team like Maryland beat Houston yesterday, but that didn't happen. You get 1 out of 9, and all year long, people are talking about how great the conference is. Really, all year long, what we heard was, hey, it's Gonzaga, Baylor, and the Big Ten. And then there was a point in February where you had Gonzaga 1, Baylor 2, and then Big Ten was 3, 4, 5 in the country. And it was fun to watch them play. And you saw when the brackets came out, they weren't just 9 teams sneaking in with 7, 8, 9, and 10 seeds, and all these teams in playing games. You had the Spartans in the playing games, but all the other teams were firmly in the NCAA tournament. And for you to sit there as a Big Ten fan and say, wow, 2 number 1 seeds, 2 number 2 seeds, and only one of them made it into the Sweet 16, that means that they were getting upset significantly. That also meant that you weren't able to execute any upsets. If things had gone to chalk with just those 1s and 2s, then you would have 4 teams still in the NCAA tournament. You look at Purdue, that was a 4 seed, and that would give you 5 teams still in the NCAA tournament. So the Big Ten underachieved by at least 4 teams, and they didn't have any Cinderellas like a Michigan State, like we were talking about, win 3 games. They didn't have a team like Maryland or Rutgers go on a 2-game winning streak to get there to show the strength of the deep Big Ten. I think that there was definitely some choking, and there was some definite overrating of the conference. And I think that the biggest reason that we saw this was because the Big Ten opponents, the opponents of the Big Ten teams, were always hungrier and scrappier than the Big Ten team they were facing. Those teams were D'ing up with lots of intensity. They were hustling like Cassidy and Rick Ross. They weren't turning the ball over. And I think the best example of that was the Illinois versus Loyola of Chicago game. That wasn't the only game, but that was the best example where Illinois was arguably the second best team in the country down the stretch. They were tearing up that overrated Big Ten, and everybody thought, well, hey, Loyola Chicago, they got Sister Jean. They're a nice little cute story, but once they run into Illinois, who's going to get to the Final Four, going to get to the championship game, and might even take out Gonzaga, well, Loyola Chicago is going to be done. They'll lose by 10 points, but Loyola Chicago, they weren't just happy to be there. They came out there expecting to win, and they played like they knew they were going to win, and they knew they were the tougher team, where Illinois seemed like they just walked on the court expecting to win, not having to try. And I think that was how a lot of Big Ten teams took the court, saying, hey, we're Big Ten, we're going to win, and then they got punched in the mouth and didn't know what to do.
Yeah, maybe that was the reason. It's weird looking at the Oral Roberts game against Ohio State. I'll buy that they took them lightly, and then Oral Roberts went back and validated themselves by winning another game. But, watching them games, Oral Roberts had a nice guard, but it's not like they torched the nets and were throwing them in from all over the place. They just played
because they don't have the talent.
Gritty game, and were able to beat Ohio State, which is, still shocking to me. Mm-hmm. Illinois, man, Loyola Chicago, that's a good team. Like, they shouldn't be an 8 seed. Their coach is awesome. If I was Indiana, I'd be throwing everything, to get him. And the way that they played, the offense, everybody fit right in, running their plays, putting Illinois through blenders all the time, taking care of the ball late. I mean, that was a magnificent game, really, by Sister Jean's crew there. You just got to give it up to them. They just played the perfect game. They really were awesome. I don't know if Illinois was sitting back, like you're saying. It has that look when you're a 1 seed. One thing, it reminds me like when you're like that thing, like all those guys from Illinois, Chicago, they're probably telling them like, none of those you guys were able to be recruited to the Big Ten. Like, this is a rivalry. Everybody in Chicago, they like Illinois. They don't like you. I mean, all those things, like, they took it as a rivalry. They played that way. So, yeah, I'm shocked. I wasn't shocked by watching Loyola Chicago, man. They took it to them right from the opening tap, and they were awesome. They played one of the great games that I've seen in tournament history, and I still can't figure out what happened with Oral Roberts and Ohio State. The rest of those games, Rutgers, man, that was a great game that they played against Houston. Man, that was exhausting to watch. It was the epitome of the tournament. Rutgers players laying on the court, crying, completely spent. In Houston, man, just like, pure
Rutgers,
joy,
I think, is a little
around.
bit different because they were able to win their first game and they lost to a 2 seed. But perhaps their mindset was a little bit different because they hadn't won a tournament game in 38 years. They didn't come in there with the confidence and the arrogance that a lot of these other teams had expecting to win just by stepping out on the court because they're from the Big Ten Conference.
If I was an Iowa fan, I would say, hey, Fran McCaffrey, white magic and everything. It's great to have you as a coach here, but you have to take care of the defensive end. You guys suck on defense. The rest of the Big Ten, like you look at the Ken Palms, they're in the top 10. Like, Iowa's offense was in the top 10, but their defense was like in the 70s, and Oregon just went out there and ran them off the court. It was one of the most impressive. I know they didn't play that first round game, but all the way through, all those guys from Oregon, that looks like an awesome team. And teaser, I'll be looking at them in the major wager.
Ooh, that is a significant teaser. They're getting ready to play their Pac-10 foe USC over the weekend. The other big upset was North Texas over Purdue. I mean, Purdue, Big Ten team. They've got that giant down low. They had Ivy, who has the potential to go off and was going off at times. And Purdue's going around losing to North Texas. Like these were monumental upsets, and they were all coming at the hands of the Big Ten. This is and honestly, after I was thinking about it, after the first round, I was thinking, the Big Ten hasn't won an NCAA championship since 2001 when the Spartans did, and maybe we did just maybe we do need to think about how the Big Ten doesn't do all that well in terms of cutting down the nets. They've gotten to the championship game a few times. Michigan State has, Michigan has, Ohio State did with Greg Oden and whatnot. But maybe we did, or obviously we did, put too much hype and too much faith into how good the conference was, given that we're down to one team.
All right, let's get to some of the feedback here. If you're just tuning in, watching, like, what are these guys yelling about the tournament? I want to get in. But you can get in. Type away. I read your feedback and get you involved here. Let's do it. Let's go to the YouTube live chat. That's where Ishmael says, seems like these Big Ten teams highly underestimated each team and were not prepared. Not so much of the choking. K Salty, what's up, man? He says, I agree, bro. They're either underestimated their opponents or they were sick of quarantining and playing half-assed. Either way, that's where the coaching matters the most. They didn't want to be in the bubble, so they got out of there.
And you know what? Given the fact that the Big Ten is all around the state of Indiana, and they probably had more fans than any other conference, given the fact that they had been in Indianapolis for over a week anyway because they had played their conference tournament there, they didn't have to travel, then it should have been even easier for the Big Ten to dominate, but they still had more problems. That just made it even more embarrassing for the conference.
Jerry on Facebook saying, good evening. What's up, guys? Calling you B-Chat. Beth wants to know, off topic, where'd you get your T-shirt? This was a giveaway. Pistons gave it to me, broadcasting 1 year, but I got to tell you about it. I've had this at least 10 years, and this thing has been washed a million times. It never fades. It's awesome. It's like the warm-ups that they were wearing for years. They had some red ones, and this blue one right here, man. They sold them. I don't know why I said man. They sold them at the pro shop there back when it was at the Palace. I can't say I saw them at Little Caesars Arena, but I think I'll have this shirt forever.
Yeah, you get a shirt that doesn't fade and it still fits, and that's a good thing to have.
Not bad. Not bad. All right. That'll do it for chapter 2.
All right, let's turn the page now to the third chapter. And, hey, we got more from the NCAA tournament because not everybody watches the tournament because they want to win their pools, although that's nice. Not everybody watches the tournament because they bet on teams and they want to win, although that's nice. And not everybody is watching the tournament because they have a team in the tournament and they want their team to go far, although that's nice. And, of course, as a Penn State fan, I don't know anything about that last group. My team has made the NCAA tournament once since I became a Penn State fan, and they lost to Temple on a buzzer beater. But some people watch the tournament because they look at it from an NBA draft perspective. They're not all that interested in watching, let's say, Oklahoma State on a Tuesday night in February when perhaps their NBA team is playing or they have something else better to do. But they want to see perhaps Cade Cunningham with the biggest lights and the brightest and all that's going up against an opponent in the NCAA tournament. And this is a great opportunity when you're a Pistons fan to look at some of the top 5, 6, 7, 8 picks in the draft potentially. You got not just Cade Cunningham of Oklahoma State. You got Evan Mobley of USC, who could be a top 3 player in the draft. Jalen Suggs, who could be a top 3 to 5 player in the draft from Gonzaga. Those 2 players are still playing. Scotty Barnes of Florida State, he's still playing. Moses Moody of Arkansas. And some others were in action over the weekend. Dennis, from a Pistons perspective, as you wear that Pistons long sleeve shirt, which players impressed you the most?
Well, I like Moody from Arkansas. He looked pretty good. And, down the list there, if I'm picking today, it's going to come down between Cunningham from Oklahoma State. It's going to come down to Jalen Suggs from Gonzaga, and then I'll think about taking the big fella, Mobley from USC. But Suggs and Cunningham. Now Cunningham, I've probably watched him a half dozen times now, and he's a pretty interesting player. You hear people comparing him. I've heard him compared to at least a half dozen players. Be interested to see who you compared him with. I hear the guys that I hear him comp to the most: Sean Livingston, Ben Simmons, Grant Hill, Luka Doncic. I mean, those are the guys. To me, he reminds me of the Celtics' Jason Tatum the most. And I think the one thing that I take away from watching him, I'd like to see some more explosiveness, but maybe that's where it comes in. Like Luka Doncic, he's not the most explosive guy, but he reminds me of Tatum. He's got the 7-foot wingspan, and I think that's the part. At 6'8", he can play guard. He can, he can be a point forward, whatever you want him to do. But he would be the guy right now that I would look at to take. I'm gonna put this cat over
Yeah.
there.
Now with the now that's obviously if the Pistons have the number 1 pick in the draft, but
That's right.
If assuming the Pistons have one of the 3 worst records in the league, they only have a 14% chance of landing the number 1 pick, and that's what I think is so important for Pistons fans, is that when you're watching, yes, you can say, hey, I've heard a lot of hype about Cunningham, I've seen him play, I've seen some highlights, I want Cunningham, but knowing the Pistons' luck, they might be drafting 6th or 7th. They might win a stupid game or 2 down the stretch. I mean, they already beat the Houston Rockets on Friday to blow some of their draft positioning. They could end up with the 2nd or 3rd worst record and end up with the 5th pick in the draft. But so you still need to understand as much as you can about guys like Suggs or Barnes or Moody or whomever. But Cade Cunningham, I don't think had his best performance of the tournaments or of the season when he played in the NCAA tournament. But I think that the guy that really stood out for me is a guy that I hadn't really seen play yet until the tournament, and that was Evan Mobley. I was really impressed with him, and we'll show you some highlights of him. But Evan Mobley, his games are on late, and usually I'm Ubering at that time, and going into this weekend I was thinking, all right, he's probably a good player, but if the Pistons don't get the number 1 pick, I still want them to take a guard, because when you think about going deep into the playoffs or building a championship team, you want a guard, and the Pistons, they need help everywhere, but certainly they need help at point guard and shooting guard. But I said, all these experts keep on saying Mobley could be the number 2 or 3 pick in the draft. Let me see what I can gather from him. And as you can see from some of those highlights, I was just blown away, because we're talking about a 7-footer who can handle the ball like a guard. I saw him at times bringing the ball up from the free throw line to the other side of the court and setting up the offense, or at least waiting for the guard to come across, and he was dribbling the ball with confidence, not like Andre Drummond ready to kick the ball out of bounds. He was, not just blocking shots in the paint and doing so time and time again, because he had 3 block shots in each of the first 2 games. He was challenging shots on the perimeter, sprinting out to challenge 3-point shooters and almost blocking shots. He was rebounding. It is kind of tough to see how great of a rebounder he is because everybody's shorter than him, but he was a great passer. He was running to the rim. He was driving. He was dunking, hitting hook shots. He had post moves, mid-range shots. I saw that he's a 31% 3-point shooter, which for a center is pretty good. And he reminds me a little bit of an Anthony Davis or Joel Embiid. And as far as I know, he's healthier than either of those 2 guys. I still like Cunningham. You mentioned some of the other guards. One guy you don't want to forget about is the guy from the G League Ignite team, Jalen Green, who a lot of folks have compared to Kobe Bryant. But if the Pistons are sitting there with a top 3 pick and they take Evan Mobley, given that they don't have a center and given how great he appears to be, I'd be very comfortable with that pick.
I'll tell you who else is nice on that team. His brother. He's pretty sweet.
Imagine taking Evan in the first round and then taking Isaiah with an undrafted free agent pick.
Yeah, I tell you, if I could get that combination right now, that package deal, I'd sign up for that.
Yes, absolutely would take that. You mentioned Moses Moody, and I was watching some of their 2nd round game because I'd only seen him play a little bit, and I saw that he did a heck of a lot of standing around. Because a lot of times when I'm watching these prospects play, I don't even pay attention to what the rest of the team is doing. I just look at that player, and that's exactly what I was doing when USC was playing, looking exactly at Evan Mobley and not much of everybody else. But Moody did a heck of a lot of standing around, didn't create for anybody else, and I was wondering, is this an aberration? Is he tired? And I saw that he averaged 1.7 assists per game for Arkansas this year. Now, I don't know if that's due to the system or if it's on him. When he has the ball in his hands, he seems like a pretty good scorer. And if the Pistons drop down to the number 6 or 7 pick, needing a shooting guard, I'd be okay with that. But he certainly doesn't appear to be up there with Suggs, Cunningham, and from what I've heard about Jalen Green.
I would agree with you there. Bart likes the Mobley pick. Bart said that would be a great pick, no question. Over to the live chat here. Raj said, so the Pistons consider taking any of the current Michigan players?
Not in the first round. And if they are going to take one in the first round, if it's going to be Wagner, it better be because they trade for a pick in the 20s. But if you're talking about the pick that they own, no.
Yeah, I think Wagner could get, if he has a couple strong games here, might be able to work himself inside of the top 15, but not in the top 10. But I don't think there's going to be anybody else that would be in the first round there. So some second round guys. I mean, I like Isaiah Levers. Like if he would be there in the second round. Now, don't get me wrong. Like I was seeing some tweets coming in from who's the guy from the Athletic, James Edwards the second or whatever.
The third.
The third.
Yes.
He was throwing out a tweet. Maybe he's trying to get a job at Pistons.com, but he was like, he reminds me of a baby Kawhi Leonard. Everybody was like, retweet. I was like, all right. Him and Rod Beard trying to get that Pistons.com job, but hey, maybe they'll get it.
They just hired Vince Ellis, and they got Keith Langlois or whatever. I don't think they want to get another one. I don't know, but
maybe he's getting ready to retire with tweets like that.
Yeah.
Bay's the next Kawhi Leonard. It's like, whoa. Yeah. Hey, it's got to be tough. It's tough all over, but being a beat writer for a team that everybody wants to lose, so maybe once in a while stir it up, get out there, throw something about how you think Sadiq Bey is the next Kawhi Leonard. That's the way it goes.
That would be nice if it turns out that way, but I don't think anybody's expecting that.
Keith says not any of the current players. They don't have a second round pick. I think they got somebody else's second round pick though. Raj, they shouldn't take Dickinson.
Dickinson is not going to be one and done.
No, I don't think so either. And if he came out, he wouldn't be a first-round pick. I mean, he needs to work if he can, show that he can shoot from outside, like three-point shot, and then it'll be different. He'll try to feature that next year.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's turn the page to the fourth chapter.
Oh, that gets us to Chapman's favorite sport. That is baseball. In a week from Thursday, it'll be opening day. And we found out this week, for the second year in a row, it'll be Matthew Boyd will be the Tigers' opening day starter. What are your thoughts on that, Chapman?
My thoughts on that. Look, does he deserve to be the opening day starter? No. I mean, he was absolutely awful last year. 16 and third innings pitched, an ERA of 6.71. Get this. I didn't realize this until I listened to the Fangraphs podcast, and I was listening to...
And he gave up the most runs and home runs?
Yes. The most runs and home runs in baseball last year, and he's the two-time defending home run allowed champion, because in 2019, he gave up the most home runs in baseball. And you're probably thinking, as a Tigers fan, look, I get that we're in a rebuild, and the rebuild's not going all that well. I get that Skubal and Mize didn't have a nice debuts last year, and I know that they didn't spend big money on starting pitchers, but can they throw somebody out there for the first game of the season that isn't the two-time defending home run allowed champion? Is there anybody else better that they could throw out there besides the guy that gave up the most earned runs? Like, there's got to be somebody better than this. And I was looking at the options because, I mean, the last thing you want is opening day, play the Indians so they never beat, and then Boyd can't get out the third inning because he gives up all these home runs. The problem is that the options aren't great. They brought in Julio Teheran, who has been pretty good this spring, but he had a 10.05 ERA last season. Matt Manning is not an option. Casey Mize shouldn't even make the opening day roster. He's not an option. Tyler Alexander's not an option. Jose Urania is not an option because he got to camp late and has only thrown 4 2/3 innings pitched. Michael Fulmer, it might not be good enough to start opening day for the Mud Hens. Tariq Skubal, he was the guy I was thinking about, and he didn't give up his first run of the spring until earlier today. And I was thinking, maybe if he can get you one more good outing, he'd be a better option. Although most of the time, a manager's not going to be bold enough to put a rookie out there to start opening day. But then, not only did he have a bad year last year, but today he not only gave up a run, he gave up 2 in 4 innings, which is not bad, but he gave up 5 hits and he walked 5. Giving up 5 walks a week and a half or a week before opening day is probably not a good sign. And then I was thinking, well, the obvious answer is Spencer Turnbull. He was the only respectable pitcher in 2020.
That's right.
I didn't realize this until a few hours ago. Spencer Turnbull appears to have the coronavirus. And teams aren't allowed to confirm that a player has it, and unless they have consent, all they can do is say he's in COVID-19 protocols, and that's the case with Turnbull. He's been there for 4 days, and A.J. Hinch, either yesterday or today, said that Turnbull is unlikely to return to the team before they break camp on March 30th, so that's going to be at least 11 days of him being in coronavirus protocol. So it appears that he's having some pretty significant symptoms, and even if he hasn't, 11 days without touching a baseball means he can't throw opening day. So it's, between a rock and a hard place. It's either Boyd, who sucks, Skubal, who's a rookie and stunk last year, or Julio Teheran, who had a solid career until he was awful last year. It just sucks.
Yeah, Shane Bieber against Matthew Boyd opening day. In front of 8,000. That's going to be a tough one for the Tigers. You know what?
Bieber.
In 2019, the first 2 months of the year, Matthew Boyd was fabulous. And there are a lot of people that said, hey, they should trade him right now, man. This is the peak of his career, man. Get what you can for him. And I said, you know what? Let's hang on to him. That spin rate everybody was talking about. But the part I liked about him is, you talk to Matthew Boyd, you interview Matthew Boyd, you go down there, and he's just a guy you want to root for, man. He's a team first guy, he says all the right things, and just a real leader, somebody that you like that way. Well, then they didn't trade him, of course, and he just started giving up home run after home run. He needs to keep the ball in the park. I mean, there's no secrets about that. What was the quote from A.J. Hinch? I wrote it down. He's a continuous learner. He's got something to prove. So that's what Hinch is saying about it. He didn't say, yeah, he's the best of a bad bunch, so I got to throw him out there. You got any other ideas, wise ass? So that's it. The 6.71 ERA, most runs, most home runs. Like, if he manages just to give up 1 home run, I would take that right now on opening day. I don't know what's happened. Like, he was pounding that strike zone, and he did have that spin rate where it seemed like he was locked in. He was throwing those heavy balls, whatever it was. It was seemed like he was ahead of the curve on some of that stuff. But now, of course, he's taken gigantic steps back, and yeah, he's got a lot to learn, because if he comes out of the gate, this will be it. Like, he'll go from a guy that you're thinking about, yeah, maybe the Tigers will sign him to a long-term deal, and you're thinking about trading him and getting some big-time prospects, to, man, this guy might be out of here for nothing coming up midway through the season. So hopefully he bounces back, because he's a nice guy to root for.
Yeah, and he also he and his wife do a lot of great work in Uganda, helping out the children there. Fox Sports Detroit loves to talk about that. Just for reference, in 4 games in the spring, 13 innings pitched. He's given up 3 runs, so that's not too bad. 2 home runs, 10 hits, and he's walked 5, which is not good. But his strikeout rate is fairly high. He's got 13 strikeouts in 13 innings. I think that it's clear that the first 2 months of 2019 were the exception, not the rule. I mean, he was pretty bad in 2018. He wasn't good in 2017. Then he came out on fire in 2019, and I remember all that talk then about, hey, the Tigers need to trade him. No, they should hang on to him. And I just thought to myself, wait a second, like, if you're a major league executive, don't you want to see whether or not this is just 2 months of a fluke or not? And the trade deadline isn't at the end of May. It's at the end of July. And by the time the end of July hit, he had proven that those first 2 months were a fluke. And people were angry that the Tigers didn't trade him. And I remember thinking, who would want Matt Boyd? You're trying to go on a playoff run, and you got this guy giving up all these home runs. Why, if you're a playoff contender, are you going to want to trade for this guy who's been bad for the last 2 months, and before the first 2 months of that season wasn't any good? And then
remember the rumor out of New York of what Al Avila wanted for Gleyber Torres.
Gleyber Torres, yeah. I'm sure the Steinbrenners
and Cashman. It was like, oh wait, you're gonna give us Fulmer for?
Want me to throw in Aaron Judge too?
Straight up.
Gosh, it was a joke. It's like, for Matt freaking Boyd.
That was a joke. Al's like, I don't know why I get this dial tone every time I keep saying I want more than Gleyber Torres.
Yeah.
Keep hanging up on me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's get to some of the feedback here. You know what? I like this is like, I don't like their performances as of late, but I like rooting. The two guys I like rooting for, the pitchers on this staff, Fulmer. He seems like a great guy, and you know what? He should be sent down to Toledo. And then Boyd, I just talked about him, and he looks like he'll be lucky to make it to the All-Star game. Ishmael says, Akil
Baddoo
is looking good in spring training. I wonder if Miggy is going to be beastly this season.
Okay, no, for that second one. But Akil Baddoo, he looks like a guy who should make the opening day roster. He was their Rule 5 draft pick from the Twins. I know a couple of days ago he had hit his 4th home run in the last 7 days. And, when you look at the Tigers outfield, you got Jacoby Jones. They signed Robbie Grossman, who's not very good. You got Victor Reyes. And I think they signed another low-level free agent. So Akil Baddoo, there's no reason for him to not be one of the top 4 outfielders on this squad.
What about Christian Stewart?
What about him?
Oh, he's still on the team, right?
He might be on the 40-man, but he better not make the opening day roster. He sucks.
Boyd was the opening day starter by default. Not really many other options. That's for Raj. Fortunately, That's true. Paul W. says Detroit was the last city of champions in 1935. A new title is in order in 2021. Detroit, the city of rebuilding.
I was just thinking that I was looking at an article on the Detroit Free Press before the show, and it showed the recent opening day starters. Think about this. You got Matt Boyd, who's going to be starting his 2nd consecutive opening day. Do you know who was the starter the previous couple years before that?
Fulmer?
No. It should have been Fulmer one of those years. Jordan Zimmerman. I think the last time the Tigers had a decent opening day starter was either 2016 or 17 when it was Justin Verlander. But it's been Boyd, Zimmerman.
Gross.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Not many other current players. Let's see.
It should be Turnbull. It's a shame that he had coronavirus because it should be Turnbull.
Jelinek says, "What if Casey Mize been too bold?" Yeah, but the way he's pitching in the spring,
terrible.
he would have been too bold.
Yeah, Casey Mize has been terrible. I'll pull up his numbers real quick. 4 games played, 3 starts, 10 innings pitched. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put the numbers up on the screen just so you don't think I'm lying about just how bad his numbers are. And I'll highlight them for you.
Maybe he's just working on his repertoire.
Yeah, I bet he is.
His arsenal.
Yeah, he's got a lot of work to do. 4 games, 3 starts, 10 innings pitched, 11 earned runs, 12 hits, 4 home runs, 10 walks. What is this whip? A whip of 220, an ERA of 9.90. Like that. One big problem for the Tigers is there it is. I meant to put it up there. There you go. All those numbers I was talking about. One big problem for the Tigers is when you see 10 innings, 12 hits, 11 earned runs, 4 home runs, 10 walks, is you know that he's not ready for the major leagues if he's struggling like this in the minors, and not all these outings are against the opposition's top hitters. But one big problem for the Tigers is if they don't put him on the major league roster, then he's going to have to sit around because the Mud Hens don't start until like May. So he's going to be just sitting around throwing side sessions for a while. And the same thing could be said for Fulmer. The same thing could be said for Skubal, although he looks like he's worthy of an opening day spot on the roster. But these guys suck, and there's nowhere for them to go.
If they had some proven guys there and they had their normal velocity in spring training, I would give them a free pass and just say, hey, guys work on different things down in spring. I don't care or anything. Just bring it to the majors. But, the thing with Mize, he doesn't have any track record. So, you can't just say he's down there working on things. You can't say it with Fulmer.
Well, he's trying to make the team. That's got to be his mindset. I'm trying to make the team.
Well, right. I mean, they can't use the excuses they're trying to work on something. They're working on a third pitch or whatever else. I mean, it's been a disaster, and that's just where it's at. Maybe we'll have to – maybe that's going to adjust our thinking when it comes to the season total. Maybe they will lose 100 games. Maybe the over and under should be – maybe we should be taking 61. The under.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about that. I don't
want to take the under all year long. I'm going to be rooting against the Tigers. Great. Rooting against the Pistons, Red Wings, Lions. Let's go.
Well, I mean, would you get more? I mean, considering most of the over-unders are at approximately 110, would you get more joy out of winning your 20 or your $50 back, or would you get more joy out of the Tigers overachieving by 10 games and as opposed to going 63 and 90, 93, winning 73 games? I think most folks would say I'd take the extra 10 wins.
The Tigers have been joyless for the last 5 years. I shouldn't say that. I've been to a few games, hanging out with my friends, sitting out there.
I went to a game where a right-handed pitcher for the Tigers allowed a Cleveland Indians pitcher to steal home. A righty.
Yeah.
He's looking right at him. Boom.
I was sitting out there on the Pepsi porch, ran into a friend from high school, we're over there talking. And Juan Soto's my new favorite. He hit a home run, almost hit it. I mean, he hit it to the Pepsi porch. I was in the Pepsi porch. I don't want to act like he hit it right to me, but hey, that was exciting. All right, that's it. We'll be getting into more baseball next week.
Yeah, because that's the first week of the season. Now let's turn the page to the fifth chapter, and that takes us to the major wager, where we try to make you guys a little bit of money now that sports betting is legal in Michigan, not just at the casino, but on your phone. Dennis, remind us what you picked last week and what you're thinking about right now.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I do give opinions on and best bets, and you can, take it or leave it, use it or whatever. But I've now been making a running chart of exactly what I am going to be gambling on and how I do for the year. I put $10 into a pool with just 5 of my friends, and we did a survivor pool, and you got points with the the higher the seed, lower the seed. So I took Tennessee. Now they were a 5 seed, and out of all the 5 seeds, they were favored by the most points. So I thought that was going to be a nice safe back first day survivor pool, and they got run out of the gym by Oregon State. So I lost $10. So dang. I'm starting this running tab out down $10. But I do have Houston that I put a couple weeks back plus 400 to get to the Final Four. So they're 2 games away from that. That was it seems like a pretty good bet. But I'm going to go. I saw that the Oregon team was plus 3,100 to win it all. Now, they play USC, and USC killed them. The only regular season game that they played, reading the recap, the size was too much for the Trojans. But I was so impressed watching Oregon run Iowa out of the gym. This Chris Duarte, a senior, Eugene Omurie, a senior. That guy looks like he should be a first-rounder. LJ Figueroa, senior. Will Richardson, guys scoring in double figures. He's a junior. I mean, these guys are awesome. Like, that Ducks team looks so impressive enough for me. And even though they have Gonzaga in the bracket, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm picking. I would put a little down on the Ducks to win it all.
At plus 3,100.
Yeah, plus 3,100.
Yeah, well, at plus 3,100, it's I think that there's good value there. I don't think they're going to win. I don't think they're going to beat USC, but given plus 3,100, I would consider that. And I did take your advice on the Houston bet to make the Final Four, so I'm still hoping that rides out. As for me, last Thursday, I picked the Orlando Magic plus 160 to beat the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks were missing all these different guards, including Derrick Rose, who we found out earlier today was not playing in that game and had missed the last week or so because he had the coronavirus, and he said that it was 10 times worse than the flu. So for all you guys out there that think that it's not that big a deal, it only affects fat people with heart disease and everything else, Derrick Rose is 32 years old, and he's an NBA athlete. Oh, but he's got bad knees. That doesn't mean he's unhealthy. And he was out for a while, and he's still not ready to come back. But the Magic, I had them at plus 160 to beat the Knicks, and the Magic lost the game by 1 freaking point. So didn't win that bet. Before I give you my major wager for today, you saw it when Dennis was giving his major wager. You can see it right there. If you are trying to get into sports betting and you're in the state of Michigan and you want to get some free sports betting money, don't just download the DraftKings sports betting app. Down in the comments below on YouTube and on Facebook, there's a link for you to click on. You can do that on your phone, and you'll have the ability to download the app with my code so that you can get some free sports betting money to help you out. You won't have to front all your own money after you make your deposit. But tonight, I'm going to go with the Pelicans -6 against the Lakers. That's Stan Van Gundy and Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram against LeBron James and the Unibrow. Oh, wait, no. Unibrow's been out for the last several weeks with an injury, and LeBron James has been out for the last couple games with an ankle injury. No LeBron, no Unibrow means no chance for the Lakers. I expect the Pelicans to win big as they try to fight for a playoff spot. I think they're the 9 or the 10 seed. They want this game. They want to beat the Lakers. You know Lonzo Ball, who's questionable for the game, wants revenge against the team that traded him away. Take the Pelicans -6.
Pelicans -6.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We got it marked down. All right, Chapman, we want to thank Brian Jelinek, who we will hear from on Thursday on the Fifth Chapter. Also coming up on Thursday, who's in a better situation with their roster and their coaching staff and their general manager and their front office and everything? The Detroit Lions or the Chicago Bears? We'll get to that on Thursday. For Brian Chapman, I'm Dennis Fithian. Thanks for watching the Fifth Chapter. We will talk with you 7:30 on Thursday. Good night.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state when that light turns red. So don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fifth Chapter. Huh. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spitting the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fifth Chapter.